Welcome. This is the Glen Ellen Public Library 2025 Poetry Night. It's April 24. My name is Joshua O'Shea. I am the outreach librarian in the adult department, and I've got a partner here who wanted to do a workshop and presentation on making your own poetry. So, being a librarian, I wanted to give a little background. I have the lineup of what we're going to do right now. So on the side, we see 5 types. We're going to look at 5 types that are popular, something that are also easy to catch on, and maybe we can do some of our own this evening, depending on the mood. The next we're going to do is Blackout, which is as much as a tactile art activity, as much as it is the poetry, the words that we pull out of the piece of paper, and that'll make sense when we get to it. And I have my special guest with me, Beth from This Girl's Story. And so the 2 other ideas as we're running through this is that if anyone had a reading that they wanted to come up for today and save it for the end, or if you wanted to write a piece during the session while I'm talking, or use the Blackout poetry results to come up and say it up here at the end. That's also an option. So keep those 2 things in mind. So we'll go ahead and bring out our supplies as I'm talking. So we can start.
I'm Beth Tomas. I am the founder and executive director of This Girl's Story. And in a nutshell, what This Girl's Story does is we amplify girls' voices, and it is done. It is a girl-led, girl-produced magazine. It's digital, and we publish content that's contributed by teens who identify as girls literally worldwide. We've published in 8 different countries, or from 8 different countries. Let's see, what else do we do? Girls put together the magazine. It's quarterly. It's around a theme each quarter, and then other girls can contribute to the content, and we publish writing. Of course, it's a magazine, but we also, and writing can be anything. It could be poetry, or journalism, or essays, or even a short story. We also publish art, all kinds of art, and we have photography and video. And what's really cool about video is video covers all the performing arts. So if you were a songwriter, which goes really well with poetry, you can publish yourself on singing a song that you wrote. You can dance, interpretive dance. You can do a spoken word piece, record that, and we can publish that too. So our basic idea is that we want to provide this platform where teens who identify as girls can express themselves creatively. They can get real-life professional experience because they are actually putting an actual magazine together. And this builds confidence because we want to see them take the skills that they learn and to define their voice and go on to become strong, articulate, compassionate leaders. And right now, women are taking a hit, and we're being heard an awful lot, but we want to change the world where women's voices are not just heard, but they're respected. So that's us. Thanks for coming.
So I'll describe it, and then I'll turn back the lights because on camera they're just probably really gone. This is a clip from The Princess Bride, where we have the 3 goofballs who are arguing, and we see a ship, and we hear 2 people go back and forth with single sentences, and the last word in each sentence rhymes with each other. So the captain of the outfit gets frustrated and yells, "Stop it, I mean it." And the punchline is somebody responds to that saying, "Does anybody have a peanut?" That is the most basic form, and when I thought of poetry when I was a kid, that's what it was. It was just the end lines of sentences. The last words or the last sounds had to be about the same. That was the essence of it. So my understanding of it was flipped. It was less about the content or how it made you feel, but it was hyper-focused on just making sure that those last syllables rhymed with each other, that you could underline even the spelling or the phonetics of the word to make sure. So I had to completely back around. And it wasn't until undergrad, if not more, where I started not only being exposed to different types of poetry, but also working to set aside my expectations. And also allowing myself to be happy, or to sit in the uncomfortability, to look for the happiness of how the poetry made me feel. So, and happiness is a little bit of an ironic word, because I remember like reading Blake and reading parts of Mary Shelley, where I could hear the timbre, especially of Shelley's writing, that moved me. It was as much about the word scene as it was about the construction. So right now we have our haiku, which is I'd still call it ancient Japanese art form of it, but especially in the Edo period. We have free verse, which I was introduced to in the PBS cartoon Arthur, because whatever that guy's name was yelling around, free verse, free verse. We have sonnets, which would be Italian in the 1200s, even though there's that one guy, I can't remember his name, he wrote a bunch of stuff, is now known for, Shakespearean sonnets. That's his name. We've got limerick, which was made popular in the 1800s by a particular earl, but you can always find the origin of particular forms and ideas in literature scattered throughout different cultures throughout the world. And then we have an ode. This one is also ancient, and this one is the earliest attestations we have to it would be Greek. So especially in the mythology formations and in some of their wisdom or mystery literature. So these are the basic building blocks of each of these forms. I'm going to give a handout here. So the haiku is also about structure. There's typically 4 lines. We've got the first line and the third line. You're going to have 5 syllables. The second line would be 7 syllables. So I'm sorry, 3 lines. I can't count. I'm a history major. And so you end up hearing that formation really easily, really quickly. Free verse, the way I put it, is dealer's choice on the format, because it can be cascading single or triplets, which I think are really fun to do in the blackout poetry, which is the activity we'll do after this section. Or it can be, you could argue that like the last chapter of Ulysses, which is all one sentence, it's a run-on, that you could argue that is a free verse poem because of the emotionality that is presented, and it's supposed to be an art form in itself rather than a well-constructed verse or narrative with traditional grammatical and sentence structure. Our limericks, lines 1, 2, and 5, are shorter than line 3. And odes are a bunch of short lines. So like in the Orphean hymns, again, ancient Greek, Hellenistic, you'll find a lot of these short lines. So our third slide here about these 5 styles is a haiku. It's you don't have to rhyme. They can, but you don't have to rhyme. The focus is on structure. This is also a place where you can find lots of examples of wisdom literature. So concepts about ethics or about understanding the self, being at peace with oneself in nature or in a broader society, or even a virtue formation. You can find examples of those concepts or those philosophies in haiku form. Free verse, again, any rhyme, any rhythm, any meter. I've got one in here that I want to show you that I write a particular way so that it kind of tells you how to speak it. Sonnet has a very particular sentence structure. This is one. Shakespeare had variables, so you will find that Shakespeare's variable is a little bit different with the repetitions. Limericks, Saturday mornings, right? Wait, don't tell me. There's always the limericks that the call-in has and tries to guess the piece, either the piece of the news, or you just follow along with the host to put in that missing rhyming word in the third sentence. And then our ode. This is very much the focus on the mood or the rhythm. Oftentimes you'll see sonnets in the form, sonnets and odes as having a dedication to a particular object, whether it's an object of adoration or affection, a little bit of worship. There could be a romantic element to it. There could be a religious or a spiritual element to it. And then you'll definitely find a lot of silly and off-color limericks, because that seems to, the form itself just seems to invite the silliness. So this is one of those limericks from the Edo period by Basho. An old silent pond. A frog jumps into the pond. Splash. Silence again. So our pausing and the kind of reflectiveness is, it uses the form of the haiku. So this is one that is my free verse. There's different ways. Beth loves free verse, so she might treat us to one later. So this is the way that I wrote it is I use the slash character to help the reader, because that was one of the things that I always tripped on when I was learning to try to understand poetry. So standing there now alone, I cup my hands to hear so I can hear nothing. I do wonder to myself sometimes, that's why I want to go solo, the green calling, towering trees with full leaves, lovely, vertigo-inducing. If they fall, I hope I can hear it. But let's keep them standing instead. Sound good? If a tree falls in the woods. So I have a lot of unspoken suggestions with my metaphors. So that's why I like free verses, because I can still get to the emotionality or the implications without being completely constrained by form. But in my head, I'm also using meters, or there's a kind of rhythm to it. So I'm aware of kind of the other ideas. So we have Billy Collins here in Sonnets, his piece, and this is a sonnet about sonnets. All we need is 14 lines, well, 13 now, and after this next one, just a dozen, to launch a little ship on love's storm-tossed seas, then only 10 more left like rows of beans. How easy it goes unless you get Elizabethan and insist the I can't say this out loud. The iambic bongos must be played in rhymes positioned at the end of lines, one for every station of the cross. But hang on here while we make the turn into the final 6, where all will be resolved, where longing and heartache will find an end, where Laura will tell Petrarch to put down his pen, take off those crazy medieval tights, blow out the lights, and at last, just come to bed. So a larger imagery piece. Dude, just stop. Just go to bed. It's done. The day is over. And then here's the bouncy limerick. There once was a woman named Bright, whose speed was much faster than light. She set out one day in a relative way and returned on the previous night. So I had one that and I had my descriptions using kind of math-like breaking down of how to build a limerick, and so this is the only way I can get science is with puns and allusions, because the relative speed of light, where does that go? Not Horses by Natalie Shapiro. We're going to look at our ode. And again, it's less about the format itself, but it's about, in a way, holding up in the object, the subject of the author's admiration or of the author's examination. Because you could argue you could get a negative ode. You're holding up an object that is supposed to be one of delight, but really you're criticizing it. And that can be very important, especially if you're looking at truth to power types of things. What I adore is not horses with their modern domestic lifespan of 25 years. What I adore is a bug that lives only one day, especially if it's a terrible day. A day of train derailment or chemical lake or cop admits to cover up. A day when no one thinks of anything else, least of all that bug. I know how it feels, born as I've been into the rotting times, as into sin. Everybody's busy, so distraught they forget to kill me, and even that won't keep me alive. I share my home not with horses, but with a little dog who sees poorly at dusk and menaces stumps, makes her muscles known to my every statue. I wish she could have a single day of language so that I might reassure her, don't be afraid. Our whole world is dead, and so you can do no harm. So that's the part of that section. So we've got some blackout poetry next, and I am moving us along because I like to get to the activities pieces. I've got a book over here. I'm going to give this out. Blackout poetry kind of comes out of the found art movement. It's as much about seeing beauty in the rough or reinterpreting an already existing piece as is about creating something from scratch or pulling ex nihilo a concept and an emotion. So the piece I have is from Octavia Butler, Wild Seed. And some people might say you can read the piece and then find the words that you want, or don't read the piece and look for the words that you want. Goldsmith was one of the notable proponents for blackout poetry, and I feel that this quote sticks really well. The world is full of texts, more or less interesting, and I don't wish to add any more. Because the idea is that we're taking away, and I feel bad saying this, especially about having Butler in front of me, the concept of removing noise or stripping things away to get to what your essence is. So I think that even Da Vinci would have a love and admiration for the marble he was working, even as he said, by creating statues, I am freeing the piece from the marble. So the idea, and we'll just jump to the end, this is a piece of blackout poetry. All that's left are what the artist or the writer, because you could look at it from either an art or a creative writing perspective, has left from the text that they found. I don't know if this creator read the whole piece and had an idea speak to them, and then they removed everything but those ideas, or if we had an artist knowing what they wanted to present and looked at the words as building blocks that they needed to move the dust and the sand away from. People passing in sleeping cities after hours of stillness. There is romance in the black hours. So 2 more here. So on my right, my right on both screens, is a chapter heading. Don't know what the book is. You can see that it has text to it. We've got our chapter Roman numeral. We have our illustration, some kind of maybe Scottish dirk. I wonder if anybody who's read like Diana Gabaldon could be like, I know what book that is, from her Scottish fiction series. Well, we have, I'm going to have to step closer to this, the magic of something more. They left the image there, though. So this, I don't know if you could verbalize it. I don't know if it's supposed to represent anything. I don't know if you could vocalize it, but leaving the image in the Roman numeral contribute to the emotionality presentation of the piece, I find. In the same way that the illustration on the right uses a different craft than the piece on the left, uses a different craft from this. So this, we have a full blackout here. The page on the right kind of has redaction, and on the page on the left has a little bit of both. I smile. He don't bat an eye, but still, he pauses. I don't know why I even care. So with these pieces here, the intent is to make your own. Find the words, find the phrases that speak to you, and either you make the art say something, or you listen to it. You'll still get something. Either way you work with it. So those are my main pieces. I wanted to draw attention to these three groups that are in this area if people want to get involved with it. Sustain DuPage is it's a collective that I know actually more about environmentalism and gardening, but they have a creators group that focuses on creative writing. The DuPage Arts Group, that's a group I know produces paintings and portraits, and we've had their artists display up on our gallery wall on our second floor here in the library. They have a writers group. And then, of course, our regional pride, the Poetry Foundation, is a Chicago cultural center, and they have a massive facility that people can go and meet, similar to a library, to access materials and to have creative space for reflection and community building. So, Beth, I don't know if you had any other thoughts, or if you had like to wrap us up.
On our social media about the blackout.
Yes.
As a way that it might, I feel like if poetry scares you, I feel like that's a way to start. Free verse I also like, because you can tell the story and you don't have to go through all the embellishments. You can just tell the stories in the lines of your poem. So that's what I like about free verse for myself. Express your feelings without having to get all hung up on grammar and making sure that you embellish. You know what I'm saying? So I love that we did this tonight, because poetry is such a way, there's so many ways that you can use poetry to be creative, to creatively express yourself. I personally use poetry to get through some very hard times in my life. And I'm not I know you said that you're in a poetry class, and I'm like, I would never take a poetry class when I was in college. I didn't like that. I never considered myself a poet, but any time I've had to do it. So I think that's really cool. But this girl's story, what's really cool is that you can be a beginning poet and publish your stuff with us. Our whole point is to help you express yourself and share yourself. And it's a really good feeling to be published, and it looks really good on a resume to be published, whether you are in college or if you're going into work. So that's what this girl's story is all about. We want you to be able to express yourself. And so we we partner with community institutions like the library here, and other institutions, to provide these opportunities for people to come and develop that. So that's kind of what we do, and you don't have to be a poet to be published. You don't have to be a writer to be published. You don't have to be artist. You just have to be someone between the ages of 13 and 19, identify as a girl, and have a story you want to share. Even if it needs some polishing, we have an editorial team of girls that are just there, so happy to help you put your piece together. And so you're like, hey, I'm not sure how this feels. And I can't tell you how many times that's happened with the girls on the team when they write their blog. Okay, here's my blog. I did it. It's not the greatest, And I'm like, they will find the gold in your expression and help you bring that out. So that's what we do. So.
Lovely.
There you go. Thank you for coming.
Oh, yeah. Yep, and I want to say special thanks to Phil, IT, for making the world go around, and for Lucy, my program coordinator. She and I work together often, and on this, Beth, thank you again. And at the moment, do we have any guest presentations, or do we have any bravery or a little bit of recklessness? Awesome. Good. Lovely. And if I get you over here, we can make sure to right over here.
So this is a poem that I chose to read for my poetry class. It's called Laws of Motion by Nikki Giovanni, and I'm actually presenting it on Monday. But the laws of science teach us a pound of gold weighs as much as a pound of flour, though if dropped from any undetermined height in their natural state, one would reach bottom and one would fly away. Laws of motion tell us an inert object is more difficult to propel than an object heading in the wrong direction is to turn around. Motion being energy, inertia, apathy. Apathy equals hostility. Hostility, violence. Violence being energy is its own virtue. Laws of motion teach us black people are no less confused because of our blackness than we are diffused because of our powerlessness. Man, we are told, is the only animal who smiles with his lips. The eyes, however, are the mirror of the soul. The problem with love is not what we feel, but what we wish we felt when we began to feel we should feel something. Just as publicity is not production, seduction is not seductive. If I could make a wish, I'd wish for all the knowledge of all the world. Black may be beautiful, Professor Maiku says, but knowledge is power. Any desirable object is bought and sold. Any neglected object declines in value. It is against man's nature to be in either category. If white defines black and good defines evil, then men define woman, or women, scientifically speaking, describe men. If sweet is the opposite of sour and heat the absence of cold, then love is a contradiction of pain and beauty is in the eye of the beheld. Sometimes I want to touch you and be touched in return, but you think I'm grabbing, and I think you're shirking. And Mama always said to look out for men like you. So I go to the streets with my lips painted red and my eyes carefully shielded to seduce the world, my reluctant lover. And you go to your men slapping fives, feeling good, posing as a man because you know as long as you sit very, very still, the laws of motion will be in effect.